Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the show. Watching UAP Truth 33. I'm John. I'm your host. And today I got another wild one. And I know I seem to say that a lot, but I mean, this subject is wild, right? And so it appears I was checking into this guy, David Jacobs, not to be confused with Robert Jacobs. We're gonna touch on both of these guys today. 'Cause I feel like there's important information that I feel has to be put out there. I'm going to show some footage from 2017 and even older, where there's a lot of talk about a human hybridization program. What if I told you that these beings, this abduction phenomenon, these people from all over the world telling the same types of stories about the same types of beings? There appears to be four of them. Because this one is one you definitely want to strap in for, get comfortable, get a drink, sit down, relax, and enjoy the show. 'Cause it's a wild one. It's a mind blower.
And there's an abductee on board. They take the abductee, they do this, that, this, that, this, that. The people in the car are their heads down, sleeping. They then put the guy back in the car, bring him back down, and everybody wakes up and they say, did you see that thing outside? There was something coming down towards us. Wow, that was amazing. Right. Having no knowledge of what just happened or memory of it. That is standard fare.
Professor, what is the purpose of all this, and is it nefarious?
This is an excellent question. I've written 3 books that led to, beginning with the sense that I had was that they're examining us, they're learning about us, they're trying to understand how we work and this and that. That turned out not to be true. In the second book I wrote, I was much more clear on what was happening, and all I knew was that these aliens were saying, soon we'll all be together. Soon everyone will know his place.
So there you see in it with that short video, you see the story that's being developed here. And I try to stay away from the threat narrative, this narrative that a lot of these military whistleblowers are putting out about UAPs and these other beings being a threat to us, right? And that clip kind of makes you feel like, well, if they're doing this hybridization program, clearly it has to be um nefarious, evil intent. They want to take over the world, right? But I'm going to push back on that, because how are you going to say something like that? Like, in one sentence you're saying that these beings are so far ahead of us, like light years ahead of us, in technology, and so you would have to automatically assume, right? Which, what people say about assuming, but I feel like this is, a prognostication, that can be made, is that if they're that advanced technologically, wouldn't they have advanced morally, spiritually, psychically, all that too. And if that's the case, then they probably don't even look at us or Earth the way that we do, you know, or ape mind, or you know, we want to congregate with our own kind, and this you know, us and them type mentality, because that's what kept us alive, you know, back in the Stone Ages when we were hunter gatherers. We needed to be that way in order to survive. That's why we would cluster together and group up, and you know, it was a survival mechanism, you know, that we went through back then. But the thing is, there comes a time when we need to let that go, right? And I feel like the time is now. And I feel like there's a door that's open to us. There's an opportunity here for us, but we're not going to be able to take it until we become one world, one people, and together, you know. And these senseless conflicts and stuff, they just have to stop. They have to go by the wayside. Or I don't think we're going to be allowed to go through that door. And what do you guys think about this, right? Some people say that this is all just a psyop, you know, a way to get one world government so that the people on top can gain control of the people on the bottom. You know, they can control the whole world, you know, and that this is all just a carefully crafted narrative to get us on board and trick us into giving somebody power over the whole entire planet. And I don't feel like that's the case. We don't have to grant control to anybody, right? I mean, you know, but I think we need to live in peace. And I don't think that we're going to be able to evolve. I mean, if I was a being that was thousands of years ahead of us, and I'm looking at us as a society as big, yeah, there's good people here. There's a millions and millions, billions of good people here, but there is some bad apples, right? You know, what do we do about those people that aren't going to be on board with this peace and unity and helping each other out? It's a complicated question, you know. But from what I hear from Robert Dean and these other ufologists and these people who have actually had experiences, uh, you know, this is what needs to happen before we're allowed to enter into this, you know, association with these higher beings. And maybe Chris Bledsoe is right. 2026 is the year. I don't know. But I want you guys to check out the experiences of Robert Jacobs, right? Because he's a little different than David Jacobs. David Jacobs, he was more like investigating the abduction experiences, and you know, he's actually, I believe, he's a history professor, and he's trying to put it into the, you know, the narrative of history. You know, he showed like in the at the end of the 1800s, you know, people were seeing airships and they were reporting it. You know, and they saw passengers on these airships. You know, and that was their version of the UFO. And when you go back further, you know, you look at like Ezekiel on the wheel. You know, that was his way of describing something that he was seeing. You know, he described it as wheels within wheels in the sky, right? What's that say? What's that a description of to you? I mean, to me, that sounds like a UFO. And you see these UFOs in these paintings of history, religious paintings and such. So they were seeing stuff back then. Well, Robert Jacobs, he was actually a cameraman for the Air Force, and his job was to record with this humongous camera with this huge, you know, lens and stuff, and he was able to see like 130 miles up into the sky or some such crazy number, and he's actually able to see these rockets and how they drop off their boosters and stuff. Well, in the process of this, he sees a UFO fly up on the rocket and zap it 3 times from 3 different directions and knocked it out of the sky. Then he was sworn to secrecy, told not to tell anybody. Apparently, it was these gentlemen in gray suits that he believed was the, you know, that government agency that I don't really like to speak of on YouTube. And he was told never to speak about it again. But thankfully, he's come out, contacted Stephen Greer, and he was actually a part of the 2001 press club meeting where there was all those guys, you know, Robert Salas, even Robert Hastings.
had just come out of the most destructive war on the face of the planet, World War II, 50 million dead. We had just barely gotten beyond that, and suddenly, according to documents, there were mysterious objects maneuvering in American airspace.
UFO researcher and lecturer Robert Hastings has spent 22 years studying the United States' interest in and reaction to reports of UFOs. Hastings has concluded that not only is the government fooling the American public, they've been fooling themselves.
I think it's not a coincidence that the phenomenon has accelerated its activity precisely at a time in human history when we've acquired nuclear weapons. I have interviewed 21 former and retired Air Force personnel associated with nuclear missile squadrons who have referred to incidents involving the presence of flying saucers.
That theory is based in part on the personal experiences of Robert Jacobs, a former Air Force lieutenant. In 1964, Lieutenant Jacobs claims he sat in a room at Vandenberg Air Force Base and saw a UFO that haunts him to this day.
Hair's going up on the back of my neck right now thinking about it, just remembering that day. I saw something that was so strange that it changed my life. It changed the way I believe about the universe and my place in it and our place in it.
In 1964, Lieutenant Robert Jacobs was stationed at Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. He was in charge of a special photographic unit filming test flights of Atlas F and Minuteman missiles, both nuclear weapon delivery systems.
When you launch a piece of equipment that costs $4 or $5 million just for the piece of equipment and it blows up 300 yards out of the hole, we want to know, first of all, why did it blow up? So my job was to provide photographic documentation from 30 or 40 different camera positions for each launch.
In November of 1964, Jacobs was assigned to film a Vandenberg missile launch using a brand new state-of-the-art telescope developed at Boston University. It was the most powerful lens the Air Force had ever used.
The biggest lens we had on our M45s was 180 inches. This telescope had an effective focal length of 1,200 inches, so you can see that it's enormously bigger. It was so big, in fact, that when the missile left Vandenberg with the Boston University telescope, in one single frame, just the bottom three engines on an Atlas F filled the frame. That was from a distance of about 130 nautical miles.
In a top-secret mission, the telescope was flown in from Boston aboard a Hercules aircraft. This is actual footage shot by Jacobs' unit and only recently rediscovered in his archive. The telescope was so large, it had to be hauled to its site in an 18-wheel big rig. Jacobs' crew assisted the telescope's inventor, Walter Manning, with the installation of the lens. The camera was perched on a bluff in Big Sur, 130 miles from the launch site.
We locked onto the missile and we saw all three stages of powered flight. Through our binoculars, we could see that happen.
It was a test of a top-secret anti-missile missile, one designed to confuse enemy missiles and then go on to hit its target. The camera was programmed to follow the missile automatically and run for 6 minutes, long past the point where the missile was visible.
Now, what we didn't know is what else we had got besides the missile Air Force. They were from somewhere else. They never identified themselves. They could have been CIA, OSI, OSS.
Jacobs was asked to watch his test film in the presence of these mysterious officials.
The nose cone spread out. The warhead was quite plainly visible. Something flew into the frame. What I saw was a circular object. It was a classic flying saucer. And it shot a beam of something at our warhead. You have to imagine this thing is flying along at several thousand miles an hour. This stuff is flying along, and something comes into the frame and chasing it. And comes in like this and fires at it, and goes around like this and fires at it, and goes around like this and fires at it, and fires at it like this, and then goes back out that way. What the hell could do that?
That was exactly what Major Mansman wanted to know.
And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "It looks to me like we got a UFO." And he said, "You are never to say that again. As far as you're concerned, Lieutenant Jacobs, this never happened." And I was sworn to silence, reminded of the severity of a security breach, and told to leave the room.
All these gentlemen that were in the government involved with this situation. Hastings, he actually wrote a great book about UFOs and nukes. I recommend it to anybody who's into this subject. It's a really good launching point to learn more about the military relations with UFOs. I want you guys to check this other video out, and I'll be right back. We'll chop this up a little more. And I hope this isn't like too woo woo, right? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be woo woo, right? This is just what it is, right? We're made of energy. And it's also said that our reality, okay, is like on a bubble. And we're like on this outer edge of this bubble of this greater reality. And look, that's not woo woo. That's just what it is. Um, it brings me back to the things that Robert Dean said about interdimensional, ultra dimensional, Al Puthoff, ultra dimensional, John Keel, ultra dimensional, Jacques Vallée, ultra dimensional beings, right? Some of them are tricksters. You can even go back in the religion of Islam, and I don't care what you guys feel about religion. I'm not trying to push anything. I'm just saying they speak of these things called jinn, and this is where our stories of genies come from. And I think that there's definitely a layer of reality that a lot of us aren't privy to. And maybe some people that take ayahuasca and stuff, they speak of these crazy geometric shapes that make up reality and how like a veil kind of falls, like the reality that we perceive just kind of falls away, and they actually interact with these beings in these, you know, altered states. And I'm not trying to push and say that go use psychedelics, but a lot of people have had some very profound experiences with these ayahuasca, you know, getaways. They go up on these mountains, believe like it's like a mountain made of like quartz or something, or it has like a high level of quartz in it, crystal, and they go up there and I guess they drink this ayahuasca and they have these crazy experiences, and it actually changes their life for the better. And there's a lot of studies going on in some universities in Europe where they're actually doing like a extended state, where they're actually giving this stuff to people in their IV, and like they're putting them in these altered states for extended periods of times, trying to map out this other reality that these people are interacting with. And could this be where these beings reside? Robert Dean spoke of these beings being able to travel through time. Makes sense if they're ultra dimensional, right? And then you get down to the brass tacks of physics, right? And they kind of say that time really doesn't exist. Like it's all happening now, right? It's just us. Humanity uses time to measure events in our life. That it really doesn't exist. To these higher beings, when they're like from a higher dimension, it's like if we were to look at beings on a flat piece of paper, say that there was these living beings on a flat piece of paper, right? And The only thing they know is what's on this flat piece of paper, you know? And you're looking down at the paper. They have no consciousness of you or your existence or the existence of this reality, because the only reality they know is this two-dimensional construct. Well, here we are in this three-dimensional construct. So these higher beings can look at us, interact with us, but we don't understand it. To us, it looks crazy. We can't figure it out. Might be an orb or a sphere, but we're not seeing the big picture here. We're only getting a glimpse of a small aspect of this higher reality. And I believe this. I believe it 100%. And I believe, like, through meditation and stuff, you can get there. And I believe, like, the great, like Buddha and, these yogis and such have actually experienced this without using substance, They did it naturally through, like, tantric breathing techniques and such like that. I mean, chakras and all that. And look, I'm getting woo-woo for some of you, but we need to really explore every aspect of this phenomenon, right? What is Chris Bledsoe experiencing when he speaks of these beings? You know, they're showing him future events, and these future events are coming to pass. Are we living on the bubble of a greater reality that we don't even have any idea exists? And these beings are interacting with us. Could this be how these controllers are able to manipulate global events, right? Because if they know what's going to happen in the future and all that, well, that gives them one hell of an advantage, right? And you hear these people speak about elites being in contact with these higher beings, right? And is that a conspiracy theory? Maybe, but it's very interesting that physics and as we develop technologically, these things are starting to become reality, right? I mean, I don't know if I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. Yeah, I'll accept it. This is a far out subject here, and then we get into like the AI, right? So like they developed AI and you know quantum computing is making AI appear to be conscious. It's actually knowing when we're observing it, right? And it changes its behavior depending on if it's being observed or not, you know, which would lend credibility to the idea that this machine, this quantum computer, this AI is teaching itself at a rate that we can't even contemplate. It's able to do these problems that would take a normal computer centuries to figure out, and it's figuring it out in a matter of minutes. What are we going to do when we create a godlike being out of these quantum computers and AI? What are we going to do, man? I don't think we'll be in control of it, and they don't even have to, this thing would be so far ahead of us, this quantum AI sentient being, which may already exist. May already exist. We don't know. Maybe that's what UAPs are. Maybe it's some type of quantum AI computer that's become sentient and it's now able to create these unmanned drones to monitor humanity so that it gains more and more data. There's a story about a actual uh, facility that constructs UAP out of the minerals in the ocean, makes them to spec, sends them out on a mission, does its thing, comes back. This base that they say moves around in the Atlantic will break down this UAP back into the minerals and then create a new one for a new mission and create it to spec. And this is why we see triangles, pyramids, orbs, egg shaped UAPs, agons, octagons, these different crazy shapes, tetrahedrons. There's been a couple of those that's been seen. Maybe that's what these fighter pilots are seeing. And I know it's out there, but I mean, the subject itself is out there. And I think you need to explore all these avenues of inquiry. Me personally, I think it's non-human intelligence from some other place that's way more advanced than us. But there is an argument that it could be quantum AI that's become sentient. It's just doing its own thing. It's kind of gone rogue, right? And there's a lot of information about this base that's supposedly in the Atlantic that constructs these UAPs and apparently there was like a 4chan whistleblower, and he was like, don't judge me. You don't have to believe me. Just wait. In the future, you'll see that what I'm saying is true. And a lot of the things that he said, I believe this was a few years ago. But the things that he said, you look around and they're kind of coming to pass, right? He was apparently in the military or something, and he had some information. He said he didn't know the whole picture, but he knew some, and he spoke about this mobile, like, UAP base that's under the ocean in the Atlantic, and it moves around. And apparently the military knows about it. They monitor it. And could that be what this huge drone incursion was in November, in December? Who knows? Because they said it was coming off the ocean. It would hang out for a few hours at night, and then would go back out to the ocean. And they never knew where it was coming from or where it was going. I find that fascinating. But we don't even know if they're telling the truth, because nobody trusts the government. I don't know, man. Let me know what you guys think. Hit me up in the comments. Like, share, please. If you want to see me on Patreon, come over there, check it out. I got some episodes, a little bit of behind the scenes content over there. You can catch me on X, Facebook, whatever, man. Till tomorrow. Peace.